Good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome all of you to the first virtual library symposium. I'm Stuart Aiken, Director of Educational Services with the Western Quebec School Board. I'm here, by the way, on behalf of Dean, the Directors of English Education Network. And we wish you all a very productive day ahead. While we are all joining this symposium from different areas across the province, I want to acknowledge that the land I am on is the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin people. Throughout the conference, land acknowledgements will be made by the conveners. At this stage, I would like to welcome all the library personnel to our 13th annual QSLiN Symposium. On behalf of the Dean Committee, we welcome participants from all the 9 English school boards. That includes Central Quebec, New Frontiers, the Western Quebec, Lester B. Pearson, English Montreal, Riverside, Sir Wilfrid Laurier, Eastern Townships, Eastern Shores, Littoral, the Cree School Board, and the Independent Schools and the MBQ. Now, throughout the day, for housekeeping purposes, there will in fact be breaks. Between 10 and 10:30, there will be a stretch and refresh with Megan. 11:30 to 1 will be your lunchtime, and you can also enjoy the video loop. Between 2 and 2:15 is a 15-minute health break. And at the end of the day, between 3:45 and 4:30, we have a virtual coffee house. And there will be door prizes given out during this activity for our lucky attendees. Now, we're all looking forward to a very interactive and engaging conference of nurturing, thinking readers. And by the way, we have a record number of participants today. Effective this morning, we have 140 participants. At this stage, I would like to introduce to you Raphaelle Dixon from the Lester B. Pearson School Board. She's the board librarian there, and she's also our current co-chair of QSLiN. Raphaelle.
Thank you, Stuart. I'm very happy that we are all able to be here today together. Our symposium theme this year is Nurturing Thinking Readers. This theme has become more important as we have faced the challenges of the past year, the pandemic, the move to distance learning, and the many other issues that the pandemic has brought into focus. How do we support our students to not only successfully deal with these challenges, but help them continue to grow fully into the people that they are to become? How do we nurture them to become not just readers, but thinking readers? I know that as library professionals, you have already been nurturing thinking readers, some of you for many years. You are the remover of barriers and the opener of doors. That role has become more important now than ever before. Our speakers today have rich presentations that will give us new and additional paths to provide students with tools to critically assess what they are seeing and reading, books to frame their experiences and their feelings, and resources that reflect their own world, as well as expand their worldview. For you as participants, we recognize that a virtual conference is very different from an in-person one. Throughout the day, I encourage you to do whatever works for you to stay engaged. This might mean closing your email or closing a door, getting up and moving around, or settling down with a refreshment. Maybe you want to take notes, ask questions in the question box, do whatever works for you. The blue buttons at the bottom of the screen will allow you to move from session to session, and you are free to go to whatever session you desire. No matter what you registered, you have that freedom to choose the session you want today. Feel free to use the question box, both for technical questions and to ask questions to the speakers. We'll make sure that your question goes to the right person. I also invite you to take advantage of the opportunities to hear from and to share with your colleagues across Quebec. During the lunch break, the book recommendations that you sent us will play on a video loop. We also have a collaborative whiteboard. The link is underneath the question box, and I invite you to share your library stories and your conference takeaways on this whiteboard throughout the day. If you are on social media, our hashtag is QSLiN. The virtual coffee house at the end of the day is your chance to turn on your camera and your microphone and share in real time. Everyone is invited to the coffee house, regardless if you registered for it at registration or not, you can still attend. The link is below the question box, and that link will become live only at the end of our closing session. Members of the QSLiN committee are going to be in the coffee house to welcome you. There'll be somebody there that you know. This year's conference is a year of many firsts. And before we move to the morning keynote session, I would like to give some special thank yous. I would like to thank all the presenters we have today. Thank you not only for the wonderful sessions that you have prepared for us, but also for the patience that you have shown us as we have bombarded you with requests for information and files. To the presenters whose sessions we had to regretfully delay to future symposiums, I would like to thank you for the graciousness and the understanding that you showed us. And to the members of QSLiN, I would like to thank you for the incredible work that you have done to put this conference together. You were hardworking, dedicated, and an extremely talented group of people. The current members of QSLiN are, from the Central Quebec School Board, Chelsea Baker; from the Eastern Shores School Board, Lily Sun; from the Eastern Township School Board, Courtney Morrison; from the English Montreal School Board, Julian Taylor; from the New Frontiers School Board, Christopher Blouin; from the Littoral School Board, Joël Vincent Cyr; from the Riverside School Board, Lucie Dubuc and Gigi Nadeau; from the Sir Wilfrid Laurier School Board, Diane Robert and Laura Wolfe; from the Western Quebec School Board, Jennifer Davies, Aaron Miller, and Lee Randall; from the Sacred Heart School of Montreal, and representing the Quebec Association of Independent Schools, Joan Harrison; and from the Ministère de l'Éducation, Melanie Carriage. One final very special thank you. Last year was Julian Taylor's final year as chairperson of QSLiN. Because the 2020 symposium was canceled, we did not have the opportunity at that time to thank him for the years of work that he has put into developing and organizing the symposiums. Julian organized the first symposium way back in 2009, and he has organized 8 of the 13 subsequent symposiums. He has truly built up this annual conference to what it is today, an outstanding professional event with lots of fun extras. Remember the symposium videos? That was Julian. Remember the fibbins? That was Julian. Remember the delicious food? That was Julian. Okay, well, he didn't actually cook the food, but he did organize it for us. But more importantly, it was Julian who ensured that the symposium gave us opportunities to learn about current library issues from keynote speakers from across North America, as well as from our own local experts. He ensured that we had opportunities to connect personally with our library colleagues from across Quebec. Moreover, he has eased the transition for the new chairs by continuing to offer his expertise and guidance, and has been a major contributor to this year's symposium. Julian, if we were all together in person, this is the moment we would all stand up and give you an ovation. For your years of hard work, leadership, and vision, we thank you. We have a gift for you. It's actually hidden in the room that you are now, between your desk and the curtain there. I'm going to ask you not to open it just yet, because hopefully it's going to bring a smile to your face and make you laugh out loud. But I will now pass the floor to Julian Taylor, librarian at the English Montreal School Board and past chair of QSLiN, to start the keynote session.
Thank you very much, Rafaela. I'm not really quite sure what to say other than thank you. It has been a lot of work over the last decade and a bit, but I think has really helped our community, and for me that makes it worth it. And I also want to say that everybody who's been a part of QSLiN have been fantastic collaborators, and putting together something like this it requires a lot of eyes and a lot of input and a lot of a lot of love from a lot of people who believe in the idea of trying to help make our library community, as part of the educational community, that much more vibrant and enriching for our students. Because I mean, in the end, that's why we're all here, and I'm happy to have been a part of it and to help guide us all that way, if that makes sense. So unless there's anything else, I think it's time that we start learning from somebody else. So actually, I just realized one thing I did want to mention. As Rafaela did mention, there have been a number of QSLiN videos over the years. Many of the sessions today will be recorded and in the near future will be put on the QSLiN YouTube channel, including the session we're about to have right now with Hugo. So hopefully that is going to be a good reminder of you and a refresher as you want to move forward in life and in your careers. So now to turn towards Hugo. Hugo, who I apologize, I'm not going to be able to pronounce your family name properly. You tried. My Portuguese is really horrible. I'm going to go with Hugo Rodrigues. Hopefully you can pronounce that better for me. Oh, okay, apparently that was correct. We've been in contact off and on now since January 2020. So it really feels good to finally be able to introduce him and to have him be able to share the program by the Fédération professionnelle des journalistes du Québec, the 30 seconds, hashtag 30 seconds. And this is going to be the first time that they are going, well, he on their behalf is going to be presenting it to our library community. The program itself has undergone a few recent changes to better adapt it to an online results. As a result, the English slides are actually not ready yet. It's not just a simple translation. A lot of the examples have to be found from English media. But the Federation has allowed us to use the French slides, but Hugo will be presenting in English. That said, if you do have questions during the question periods, please feel free to ask them in either language. That's really not a problem for us. So a little bit about who Hugo is. Hugo is the Hugo is the managing editor of the Standard Freehold, which reports local news and sports in the communities of the city of Cornwall, the United Counties of SDG, which I believe is, actually I'm not going to go from memory, Dundas, I remember is the D, and Aquasasne. His work has been recognized by the Ontario Newspaper Awards, the Canadian Association of Journalists Awards, and the United States Education Writers Association. Outside of his newsroom, Hugo was on the board of directors of the Canadian Association of Journalists from 2008 to 2018, and he was in fact the president of that association from 2011 to 2015. He continues to volunteer for the CAJ, administering its awards program. He was also a member of the National Newspaper Awards Board of Governors from 2006 to 2015, and he joined the Fédération professionnelle des journalistes du Québec in order to be able to assist in sharing the 30-second message with us. So Hugo, on that point, I'll turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julian. That was quite the intro. Having someone else go through your biography is always an interesting thing to listen to and be a part of. But thank you to you, Julian, and to QSLiN for the invitation to participate in this year's conference. It was a regret that it didn't happen last year, where we could have all seen each other in person. But I'm glad that we were able to find a way to make it happen this year. So as Julian mentioned, I am the managing editor at the Standard Freeholder in Cornwall, and he dealt with a good part of that question in terms of, so what's a journalist from Eastern Ontario doing presenting a package of information in a program developed by the FPJQ in Quebec? So during my time with the CAJ, we forged links with the FPJQ, who are an industry association, much like QSLiN, who represent professional journalists working in Quebec, mostly obviously working in the French language. And as Quebec is a little bit more progressive in certain things than some of our other provinces in the Federation, some government funding and encouragement was provided to FPJQ to develop this program as an important piece of sort of media literacy education. And as librarians, I know that you are foundational to helping students understand what media literacy is, and especially developing those critical media literacy skills. So when I heard that the program had been developed, I wanted to be a part of it. And they said, okay, well, become a member, even though you don't work in Quebec, and we'll provide you with all the materials. So as Julian mentioned, the slides will be en français, but I really couldn't think of another audience where presenting slides written in French while doing the presentation in English makes sense. Certainly no other conference in Canada that I can think of where that works outside of a conference like QSLiN. So for the next approximate hour, we're going to talk about disinformation, we're going to talk about misinformation, we're going to talk about fake news. So that includes getting an understanding of what fake news is, so providing a definition of it. A chunk of time where we'll talk about the role that social media plays, because it does play a very important role in accelerating fake news and allowing it to spread like wildfire in many occasions. And also we'll wrap the presentation talking about sort of the role of media and journalists and the role that taking 30 seconds to critically analyze something before sharing it can play in helping to stop the distribution of fake news and to give credibility and to share pieces of legitimate news and information. We will stop at a couple points during the presentation for questions, and there will be a question period at the end as well. So let's get on to it. The term fake news is used quite a bit these days, certainly south of the border. Former President Donald Trump liked to use the term a lot, often when referring to legitimate media that he didn't agree with, or to attack critical media pieces that had been written about him or his family. But it's a fuzzy definition. So here's the definition that we're going to work with. So it is a fabricated story that is made to look like a real story with the goal of fooling people or misinforming people. So let's break that down a little bit. So it is a fabricated story. So it can be completely false, or it can be based on a piece of truth, an element of truth that's been exaggerated, or an image or photo or a video that's been handled or modified or simply exaggerated in order to take that original piece and push it out of the bounds of the context in which it was taken in. It is made to look like real news. And this is a key piece. So the fact that it looks like real news, that it's made to feel like real news, is what helps people grab onto it and what helps people think that it's something that they should share. And then that's what helps it go viral and start to get traction. However, we can't forget that at the end of the day, one of its goals is to fool us or to misinform us. So journalists, professional journalists working in their work, when we make a mistake, as soon as we learn that we've made that mistake, we correct that mistake. And in this day and age, that means correcting it across multiple platforms. So as soon as we're aware that we've made an error, we'll correct that in online. And if, for example, we're broadcast or we're print media, in the next edition of whenever that comes out, we'll make sure that we correct that error as well. And that's an important piece of accountability, to make sure that we are human. We do occasionally make mistakes, but we take a responsibility and accountability for those mistakes. With an item of fake news, you're not going to see that level of accountability. So here's an example. This is a piece of fake news claiming that Microsoft is collaborating with pharmaceutical companies to implant electronic microchips in our bodies to surveil us. I mean, it's fake. No sort of critical, seriously minded person would believe in this article. First of all, because to date, this technology doesn't exist. Also, if you look at the way that it's been built, it looks like it comes from a legitimate news site. So, at a first glance, it can look like it is a legitimate piece of information coming from legitimate media. And then when you look at the counters that are sort of to the right of the headline, you'll see that, they're keeping track of how many people have looked at this. And it's been looked at over 100,000 times. And this link, when it was shared on Facebook, was liked more than 63,000 times. So a number of folks got caught by this and shared it believing that it was legitimate. So creators of false news, they want to manipulate us, and they see us as gullible or someone that they can influence, because what they've done is built something that they hope will get us to believe what it is that they're trying to share with us. But the second part of it is just important as well, because they want to use us as a tool. And the way they want to use us is they want to get us to like, comment, share, engage, so that then using our contacts, using our circle of friends and folks in our social medias, that the content that they've created gets exposure to that additional audience. So why? What are the goals? What are the reasons why creators of fake news do this, and then use us and use our social media accounts to help spread the misinformation that they want to get out there? So a number of different reasons. First of all, political motives. You have people, groups, political parties that either wanting to promote a candidate or a particular platform plank, or simply to do sort of, that dirty oppo research on their opposition candidates, will create fake news. So example on the screen here that was distributed during the recent presidential campaign, Joe Biden had an earbud in his ear during one of his appearances in one of the debates. And so this was latched onto, and all kinds of conspiracies and different reasons for why he had it, and what are they telling him, and what are they putting in his ears, and are they answering the questions for him? I think at one point the Trump campaign also tried to suggest that his sanity was in question, so the earbud was a required piece of technology to make sure that he would stay on track during the debate. And I mean, when we consider that, former President Trump, and this has been proven by a study from Cornell that was done in the fall, has been one of the biggest misinformers when it comes to the current COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. And you see some examples of his tweets. Of course, he's not on Twitter anymore due to some more egregious things that he did on January the 6th. But he was effective at using social media and Twitter in particular in pushing what he wanted people to believe, even though quite often what he was sharing had little, if no, actual connection to the truth. The other way that the other goal for fake news can be for ideological reasons. So, somebody who is trying to defend a cause, an idea, their particular point of view, and we see this with issues such as climate change, with immigration, with vaccination, anti-vaxxers, more recently during the pandemic. And there's a healthy community of this sort of person on our own Facebook page for my newspaper, which is the COVID-19 conspiracists. It doesn't exist. It's not real. It's the flu. How come there is no flu this year? All this kind of community, and it's ideological at its core. So, on the screen here, we see an example of someone who was said to have had a tracheotomy after having been in a coma due to COVID-19. And he gives sort of a first-person testimonial in this, what is made to appear like a piece of government publicity. But a number of sort of internet researchers, kind of convinced that there was something fishy about this, were able to find the information that demonstrated that this isn't, he's a real person, but this is an actor who was hired and given a script. So this is not actually somebody who was in a coma, who was on a ventilator, or at the time that this was shared, that we know of had caught COVID-19. So, the role of the media here in disproving what was being pushed out and was being shared across social media. So another example here, this is from Radio Québec, sort of denouncing, our lockdown and our confinement, and we've all had several rounds of this now and are just starting to come out of the second round with a wary eye towards the potential third round. You know, tied to this come these thoughts of it's a plandemic, right? It's part of the Great Reset. This supposed government memo that was circulated in the Trudeau cabinet that has like 19 bullet points, and we've already ticked off like 10 of the 19. And, you know, at the time that these screen grabs were taken, and this YouTube page has since been shut down, but it had 120,000 subscribers. So it was getting traction. The other way that, or the other goal for fake news is, and videos tend to feature strongly in this through YouTube and the other platforms that allow us to share videos, is simply to, for celebrity. To boost someone's profile, to draw attention to themselves and either often their ideology and their politics. You know, they put forward these videos in an attempt to do that. So on the screen we see an example of Solange Balduc, who claimed to have seen Montreal Mayor Valérie Plante at a rally in support of Adil Sharkoui, a controversial imam who I'm sure you're more familiar with than I am, who protested the provincial bill La Loi sur la laïcité back in 2019. However, this was proven to be fake because on the day that that particular rally and event was held, Mayor Plante was actually in Argentina. So, you know, this was shared on a Facebook page called Non à l'injustice au Québec, and was shared over 1,800 times in under 24 hours, which is a substantial number of shares in that amount of time for a province the size with the population of Quebec. But, you know, Jeff Yates of Radio-Canada was the one who did the work to show that, you know, at the time that this was taking place, and at the time that supposedly that Mayor Plante was there, she actually wasn't. She was 9,000 kilometers away. So when he confronted the person who'd posted this video, her response was, you know, this doesn't change anything about what I wrote because it's what I believe and it's what I think. And sorry, I've got a slide behind here, but here's the slide about Mayor Plante. The other, and this is a huge reason as well, is financial motives. A number of creators of false news, you know, the message isn't as important. What's important is they want the message to go viral. They want it to go viral, particularly across social media, because every time, I mean, you know, here we're talking about clickbait, right? So every time they get somebody to like, to comment, to share, if they can convert that like, comment, and share to engagement with what they've created, either on the social media or on their own websites, it converts, those clicks convert into cash. And you know, the more it's shared and the more engagement with it, the more money they end up making. So, you know, here's a fake news site, and you know, you'll notice it's highlighted at the top right that, you know, that is a legitimate Google ad campaign ad for a Ford dealership. So by loading the page, by having that ad appear on your screen, that the owner of this website has earned some money, not a lot, mind you. We're talking pennies, but they have earned that amount. And the more people load the site and the more screens that ad appears on, the more financial gain it has for the publisher, and it works. So in one of the largest studies that's been done on this subject, researchers at MIT demonstrated that false news, or fake news, sorry, has a 70% higher chance of being retweeted on Twitter in that particular format than, so sorry, a 70% chance of being retweeted over valid news, and that it can reach 150,000 people 6 times faster than real news. So why does fake news have an advantage or spread faster than legitimate news? So most of all, it's because very often they're written in a way to grab attention, right? So they play off our emotions. So, you know, we're going to take a piece of information, whether it's been verified, whether it's not, but something that is attention grabbing, something that plays off our emotion. And we're talking about playing off of our strongest emotions. So things like fear, disgust, surprise, anger, and these can short circuit our critical skills and lead us to then like, share, comment, without sort of taking a step back to engage with that content and see, you know, is it legitimate? Is it something I should be sharing? Because we see it and we get that emotional trigger, and those comment, like, share buttons are just right there, and they're just so easy to just click on. So the content's been created to elicit this response. So, you know, here's the part again, going back to that earlier slide, where we're being used as a tool. So another example here, this fake news about an airplane that disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle in 1945 and landed in Florida with the entire crew aboard. So, I mean, it's obviously false. And it comes from a website that affirms and actually states quite clearly that it's a satirical news site. So the goal here is to make you laugh, not necessarily to even try and present itself as legitimate news. However, by playing off that emotion, playing off that laughter, that, you know, this is kind of cool. You know, this was shared over 300,000 times, even though many of the people who were sharing it probably realized that this wasn't true. Other times it's playing off of celebrity, playing off of people who are known. So the Mackenzie Post, which is again another fake news site, posted this a number of years ago, completely fake, but claiming that Leonardo DiCaprio was going to move to Bay St. Paul. Congrats to the residents of that region, but sorry, it was fake news. It never happened. And, you know, when we talk about the polarizing subjects that fake news plays off quite often, again, you know, so we're looking at politics, immigration, healthcare, climate change, things like the environment. These are all issues that can touch, you know, can touch a sensitive spot for people, can play off their opinions and emotions. In politics, one of the fake news items that actually got the most traction during the 2016 campaign was this piece of fake news saying that Pope Francis supported Donald Trump's candidacy. It's fake. The Pope doesn't often speak on politics in any particular region, but he definitely didn't endorse any particular candidate in the 2016 campaign. However, the site BuzzFeed did an analysis on this piece of fake news, and during the 2016 campaign, this was the most popular piece of content that was shared on Facebook in terms of that engagement of likes, comments, and shares. That was shared more often than any piece of legitimate news or legitimate coverage from the 2016 campaign. Images and videos can also be manipulated. So this example that's on the screen here from May 2019 is Nancy Pelosi, who's now once again the Speaker of the House of Representatives after the most recent election in the States. And back in 2019, the original video is a conversation between her and this reporter from the Washington Post. However, an anonymous internet user slightly slowed down the video. And in doing so, it made, when Nancy Pelosi spoke, it made her sound as though she was intoxicated and that she sort of was without her faculties. It was subtle, but it was enough that for those people who, you know, don't like Pelosi or are of the other party, shared the manipulated video because it allowed them to accomplish that goal of trying to push this impression that, she wasn't competent, that she had issues, that she had problems. Here's this serious interview with the Washington Post, and, she's intoxicated and sounds like she can't string two words together. Memes are also another way of sharing false news and false impressions on a controversial subject. All you need is a picture and some strong language without any sort of subtlety that easily gives the impression that these are facts and are built to be absolutely shareable. So a good example here of Justin Trudeau. This is from 2018, right in the middle of negotiations with the United States for the what is now the current free trade agreement. However, presented like this meme gives the impression that Justin Trudeau actually said these words, but it's a false quote, and it was created for political and ideological reasons. Same thing here in terms of another example of a manipulated video. In May 2018, this video went viral on Twitter. And in the video, a group of people is seen to appear to be attacking vehicles in the streets, hitting them with sticks and batons, throwing projectiles. The captions suggest that these are Muslim immigrants that were blocking the streets of Birmingham in the UK, and that were causing this sort of looting and destruction during the holy month of Ramadan. The video is real. However, it was filmed in Switzerland, and what it is showing is actually conflict between two groups of partisans after a soccer match. So the description was completely false, but written in a way to use a real image, a real video, to turn or to push an impression of a negative impression of Muslims. This example is used here because this same video was modified a number of different times. Instead of being a riot in the streets of Birmingham in the UK, pick your country, pick your city, and it becomes that instead. We can do the same thing. Sorry, that was me getting a slide behind again. We can do the same thing when it comes to images as well. This particular image is also a few years old. It was shared on a Facebook page, an anti-immigration Facebook page in Norway. And at first glance, at a quick glance, it has an appearance of being something that it's not. If you take a closer look, these aren't people or veiled people. They're just bus seats. However, again, another example of taking a real picture, a genuine picture, and finding something in it that can be torqued to play off people's emotions and get those shares, likes, that engagement. So, a simple Facebook post or tweet can also serve the same purpose in terms of sharing fake news, sharing a polarizing statement. As this example of climate change in a tweet from former President Trump back in 2014. The next version of this slide deck probably will have some good examples of the cold weather and snowstorms and power outages and everything that happened in Texas, and how that has been politicized, and how that has also led to a fair amount of fake news being shared about, what causes it and what the problems are with it. A good example of that has been. There have been some ideologues that have been pushing out that renewable energy was part of the cause of the breakdown of the grid. Well, it wasn't. And renewable energy sources in Texas make up 10 or 11% of the total grid. So even if they had spectacularly failed, which of course they did, along with every other means of generating electricity in Texas, that in and of itself wouldn't have been the reason why. So, in the course of the last year, we are approaching the 1-year anniversary of a number of different sort of COVID-19 pandemic signposts, and we've seen some of that coverage start to come out already. First positive cases, we're approaching the first anniversary of that first lockdown, and this has become a source of an enormous number of items of fake news on the broader subjects and sort of all the different pieces that the pandemic touches on. So, here's an example on the screen of, a remedy, a cure for COVID-19. Again, going back to former President Trump and his drinking of certain substances, and even I always butcher the pronunciation of this particular medication, but that was seen to be sort of the saving grace, the solution, everything that was going to, lead us towards being able to cure COVID-19 and finding our way out of all these lockdowns. Well, unfortunately, there is not yet a cure. We're into the vaccination phase, thankfully, although even then, that in and of itself, under the broader umbrella of the pandemic, brings up its own issues in terms of credibility. So, the scary thing, again, when we think about the virality and how easily and how quickly fake news is created to play on our emotions and get shared, is this stat that 9 out of 10 of us have already been burnt or been caught in an item of fake news. So this was sort of our first point here, where we were going to pause to allow for any questions. So I'll turn it over to Julian. Julian, if there's 2 or 3 questions that I can handle at this time before we move on, I'll leave it to you to...
Okay, sounds good. And in fact, there are 2, rather 3 questions. 2 that came in earlier, and then 1 that just came in a few seconds ago. The first one actually is going back to that study you mentioned about fake news has a 70% chance of getting retweeted faster than real news. Do you happen to have on hand the reference to that study? Because there's a person at one of the independent schools who would be, who would be curious to know that. And if you don't have it now, you could always give it to us, and then we could always just send it out to people afterwards. But she was curious about what study that was.
I do have that information. So it was something that was published in Science Magazine, and there is a specific link. And what I can do, Julian, is when I don't have to change my screens and such, I'll send that link, and then you can post it on the whiteboard or wherever that other people can access it.
No problem. We'll make sure that happens. Second question is from Melanie Bouchard at the Central Quebec School Board. That Valerie Plante article, the fake one, which website does it come from again?
Just give me a quick moment to go back through my notes here.
I think, Julian, it's the one about the plane. You know, the plane from the Bermuda Triangle that landed out in Florida.
Yep. So I do have links for that. I just don't have them in front of me right now. So I apologize for that. But once again, for both of those, actually, I will send Julian those links so that they can be posted and shared.
Perfect. I'll make sure they get out to the people. Third question, Anne Beamish, English Montreal School Board. In your experience, Hugo, are most fake news posts racist or discriminating at their core? What does that say about our society? Most is probably the word that I would struggle most. Sorry. It's, I mean, in my personal experience, in terms of sort of what I see in the social media that I'm responsible for managing, I would say yes.
And one of the reasons is I think in the space of a sort of current political climate and how things are becoming increasingly polarized, fear of the other, fear of the other is not new to society or to humanity. But one of the strongest manifestations of fear of the other at the moment is folks who come from other places or other communities or other backgrounds than our own. And again, playing on those very easily manipulated emotions, fear of the unknown, fear of the other. And then, when you see something that claims to say something about someone or a group of people that you don't really have a lot of familiarity with, it makes it easier to, play off that emotion of fear, of discomfort, of ignorance to a certain extent, and makes that piece, the virality of that piece kind of easier to come around to. I've seen practical example of this here in Cornwall. Obviously 2020, BLM, George Floyd, lots of examples for communities to be able to kind of take a hard look at themselves and how they treat, people within their communities who aren't white. But even prior to that, the asylum seekers that were crossing at Roxham Road, for a period of time, the federal government had contracted the former Transport Canada NAV training center here in Cornwall, which is now just called the NAV Center. And they had set up accommodations to be able to house these asylum claimants while they were waiting to be processed. And of course, as the reality was the majority of the folks crossing illegally at that point in time were, they weren't crossing illegally, but the majority of it, which again is that's a political perspective that was being pushed, right? Was that these folks were crossing illegally. So the majority of folks who were crossing and seeking asylum were Haitian in origin, so they were Black, people of color, and on top of that, for Cornwall, most of them spoke French, and the reaction here. Within certain circles, and particularly on social media, where it's very easy to get caught in a bubble and only see one perspective, was very negative and quite racist. And that took me aback. I wasn't surprised, but it took me aback. And the other part that was unfortunate was the folks who were like, well, we're not racist. Well, no, but clearly we are, just by the way these people have been treated. So, long answer to a question, but, when it comes to this fear of the unknown and fear of the other, they're just, it plays on our emotions so easily that, that's probably one of the reasons why it tends to be the kind of fake news that we see the most.
Okay. While you were speaking, we've now got a slew of new questions. So I think I will quickly try to summarize a few of them. These are good questions, though. Penelope Joy Webster from Central Quebec. What do you do when you try to tell somebody that they are believing fake news, but they refuse to listen? Yeah.
The best advice I've seen, and this can vary depending on how well you know the person, from complete stranger to, a member of your close family. For complete stranger, there's that old adage, don't feed the trolls. These folks are often posting, sharing something or sending you something because they want to elicit that reaction. And of course, the more you engage with them, the more what they've shared with you and what you are responding to will be seen by your contacts and theirs, especially if that engagement is taking place on social media. For the individuals who family members, friends, closer contacts, these are difficult decisions difficult conversations to have because they play off of our emotions. They play off of our passions. And even as kind of ridiculous as it might seem to acknowledge that, that person has a point, even as much as you don't want to say that because you believe that what they believe is completely incorrect. You know, there are, I mean, you know, sort of without going through the whole, you know, how to dissipate conflict handbook, you know, there are skills and sort of ways to bring things up. You know, if conflict's not your game, then probably the best advice I would have is to disengage and walk away. And, you know, that just becomes one of those topics perhaps that you don't discuss with this person. Or, you know, if it's egregious enough, that you reconsider who you have in your circle of friends. In the last year, I've probably seen more of the contacts that I have on my social medias say, you know, I'm sorry, but if you believe this, you know, unfriend, because I'm not interested in being connected to you anymore. Just in the interest of time, because I don't want to push the day back, I'll take maybe one more question, just so that we can get through the rest of the presentation.
That makes perfect sense. I'm actually wondering, because there's 3 questions, maybe I can kind of summarize them all together because they're kind of similar. Do you have any suggested links, like hoax buster type sites, or recommendations for videos on ways that library personnel, whether it be technicians, librarians, can help students find the way to help students figuring out the difference between fake news and facts, like things that they could use in their schools?
Yes, absolutely. The site that you mentioned is a good one. Snopes is another one that tackles a lot of stuff. Its origins were sort of more urban legends, but now it's also taken on a fair bit of fake news verification and stuff as well. As to the other parts in terms of tools, there's slides coming up on that, so I don't want to steal my thunder.
In that case, I guess we can move forward, and I'll keep the rest of these questions for later.
Okay, awesome. So moving right along. So why is fake news shared so effectively? And this is where we get into talking about sort of the role of social media. So social media has taken a huge role in all of our lives. You know, it's not that old. I mean, we think about, you know, non-academic settings. So I mean, Facebook only became available to the general population starting in 2007. Twitter really only started to take root 2008, 2009. YouTube had been around before that, but if we look at some of the other social media right now that, you know, is popular, stuff like TikTok, et cetera, Twitch, you know, we're talking 5-10 years. However, because of how easy it is to engage with, because of how easy it is to install and use across all the devices that we're now using, you know, some stats on the screen here in terms of, you know, how social media is being used to inform people. So this is specific to Quebec. You know, we're talking, again, slightly higher in that 18 to 24 age range at 95% as opposed to 89 for the 25 to 34. But I wouldn't suggest that social media is just a tool of the young at heart. While my parents aren't on social media, a number of my friends and colleagues' parents are. We're now talking about folks in their 60s and 70s. And they've taken to social media because it's the way that they stay connected to their kids. It's the way that they know what their kids and their grandkids are doing. And then through that, they're also getting exposed to everything else that's being shared. So the challenge with social media, and here's where, you know, some of those critical literacy, critical media skills start to come in, is that social media doesn't distinguish content to content. Right, so we see a couple of examples up on the screen. One about a troop of monkeys, the other one about, you know, elephants in a village in Yunnan, and, you know, the way Facebook and these are both off of Facebook posts, the way that Facebook presents these is exactly the same. So there's a few little tricks and tips that we'll start to get into, but most of you've probably been able to figure out that the item on the left is legit. It's from CTV News, and the item on the right is not. So the monkeys are true. The elephants, as wonderful as those pictures are, is not. So again, if we get back to the goal of what social media was built to do, social media, it wasn't built to teach people what is real and what is fake. It wasn't built really to help us distinguish between whether something we're reading is true or something we're reading is fake and being shared with us for all the reasons why fake news has been created. Social media was created to get people to share things. And that's the goal. So there isn't a particular interest, in Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, etc., in what you're sharing, but rather just the fact that you are sharing it. Now, many, in particular Facebook and YouTube, many have been taken to task for that because their disinterest in what's being shared is actually leading to fake news becoming viral much faster than it would if social media wasn't around. And, we're now starting to see that the proof is out there that sharing this type of disinformation can be damaging, right? So, and the classic is, the Lancet study on autism, that once social media came to the fore and personalities got behind it and started being shared, and then even by 2010, when the Lancet retracted and disavowed the study, by that point, the damage had been done to the point that, the number of parents vaccinating their children had decreased to the point where we were now seeing some quote unquote, resolved diseases or diseases that weren't seen to exist anymore in the developed world starting to take track again. So social media runs off of algorithms. And I mentioned, I teased this already in a response to one of the questions in that first break, right? So social media, the way that the geeks have scripted it to work, it is built around who you've connected with, and then how the information that you and the people you're connected with is shared. The reality is most of us will surround ourselves on social media with people who we tend to agree with as opposed to disagree with. And that leads to what can very much be a very isolated bubble. So what gets shared within your bubble, what's available within your bubble. And then that's great if it comes to pictures of your kid's last birthday and adorable, and they blew out all the candles and it's all very cute. But it becomes a festering ground for fake news if somebody in your bubble shares something because you've got that connection with them, because chances are you're connected to them because you share many of the same opinions and ideas, that, if you see them post something, you have that existing connection and trust with them, and you're more likely to share it without looking at it critically before you share it. So another example here to kind of illustrate the sort of bubble. So as you can see in the way that the illustration's been done, the different colored bubbles are representing different types of information and opinions that exist online. Everything within the white circle represents sort of your bubble and the filter that social media creates around you and your bubble. And then, of course, everything in the bubble is the same color, or shades of the same color. So what are some of the impacts of fake news? There's a number of different ones. So for example, when we talk about health, here's that hydroxychloroquine that I couldn't pronounce earlier. All the treatments, quote unquote, proven treatments that were supposed to help us fight COVID-19 circulated and went viral online. And here's the example of one of them. However, hydroxychloroquine was not created to treat COVID-19. It was created to treat a different disease, and the side effects are some that taking it could actually be more harmful than, the cure could be worse than the disease, literally. So a question kind of touched on this as well. Fake news that touches on immigration another part of the reason is why it can become viral so quickly is that it's built in a way that it reinforces our prejudices and any existing sort of intolerances that we might have. So this was a petition circulated in 2016, insinuating that the government of Quebec wanted to offer free driver's licenses to immigrants. It's fake. but it played off the anger and that fear of the unknown, fear of the other that people have towards recent arrivals, and specifically played off it in the sense that they were getting privileged or preferred access. And again, in the answer to the question earlier, I talked about sort of the asylum seekers, and there was a lot of similar sort of fake news being shared at that time about, that I'm a pensioner and I have a fixed income, and these folks that are coming here are going to get more money than I get. Well, for every time something like that was shared, playing off those emotions, there with a little bit of research, you could find, first of all, that wasn't true, and second of all, sort of what the real information was. So on this particular one with the driver's license, tens of thousands of people shared it on Facebook. Politically themed fake news is built to influence you, to influence your vote, to influence how you're supposed to exercise your democratic franchise. So we have a variety of different variations on this theme, sort of affirming that Justin Trudeau pleaded with other heads of state to send millions of immigrants to Canada. And here's what you see, right? A quick change of a headline, a quick picture, all playing off the same emotion, the same route in terms of, disagreement with throwing borders wide open to people from other places. And all that's been done in each one of these is change the picture, change the headline. Conspiracy theories. Again, another one that we've seen a lot of with our pandemic and our reset, the Great Reset, conspiracy theories that are circulating during the pandemic. And some of these aren't necessarily always fake news, but they're built in such a way to play off what makes fake news work. As a way of sharing that conspiracy theory with a broader public. So plenty of these surrounding Bill Gates. We had the Microsoft example earlier. You can see on the screen here the example from InfoWars. Now, InfoWars is Alex Jones. He plays in conspiracy theories and in sharing content that reinforces his views and his opinions. We're talking about, when it comes to Bill Gates, that he created COVID-19 as a means to reduce the world population. Again, the microchip example, and it's all fake. But as each piece of it is strung together, is put together, you start to build the conspiracy theory, and as each piece is assembled, it can seem to lend credibility to the base conspiracy theory. QAnon, I'm never sure how to pronounce this one either, is another one that we've come to know through the last election campaign south of the border. What are one of their conspiracy theories that, Washington was controlled by a group of Satanist and cannibalistic pedophiles. Pizzagate during the 2016 election campaign is something that, it kind of, I think, predates QAnon as a sort of a formal organization, but another kind of example. So the thing that conspiracy theories play off of is they want us to believe that different groups and actors in society are working together on things that most of them probably actually wouldn't work together on, right? So it's possible that, and if we start to look at it critically, we see that the links just break down. So it's impossible that such a great number of people would be involved in manipulating us in this way if it hasn't been done before. So it could be the difference between sort of real theories and conspiracy theories. So in sort of real connections, real theories, at the end we see the proof and proofs of what's been accomplished. For fake conspiracy theories, it's it's always somebody in the shadows that's trying to advance something and when you start scratching at the surface of it, right, the proof of these things it doesn't come together, it doesn't build. So this is where media starts to play a more important role and sort of start to break some of these down. So, I mean, the fact that we would participate, we compete with each other. That spirit of competition sort of helps bring some of that most important information into the public eye and in the public interest. The thought that we would collude and work together, again, we should start to look at it with a more critical eye. That line of thinking kind of starts to fall apart. However, another big impact, and this is another that conspiracy theories play into, is, and I mentioned this during one of the earlier responses, right? We are becoming a more polarized society, where it's me and my opinions versus you and your opinions. Do conspiracy theories necessarily always lead to violence? No, they don't, but they can. And I think, January 6th was a good example in Washington of how a constant stream of words from people in positions of power motivated a group. I wouldn't call it a singular group in terms of everybody believing in the exact same things, but motivated a group to become violent and storm the Capitol. It can have other effects too. So, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer here as this example. And again, this is one where, folks who had, taken belief in conspiracy theories of what the Michigan government was trying to do, what she was trying to do specifically. She actually was placed in protective custody for a period of time, sort of beyond the regular level of security that a governor would get, because they did again storm the legislative building with the intent of causing harm. These build into other things. 5G has also become, a source of a lot of conspiracy theories, and specifically even tied to COVID-19. That as we're starting to see 5G service become established across Canada, that the installation of the equipment needed to provide that service is being used to give us all COVID. But there's also plenty of again a nub of legitimate concern in terms of what is the health impact of this frequency of radio wave on people, that then gets latched onto, and we all become part of the conspiracy. And on that one, you can go, even one more with the involvement of the media, because who are the biggest players in telecom in Canada? You're talking Videotron, you're talking Bell, you're talking Rogers, you're talking TELUS, all of whom either own or are affiliated with their own, legitimate news media, right? However, I don't believe my employer owns any telecom, but anyway, I guess I'm not part of that particular cult. So what happens with polarization is that we start to build cynicism. So we no longer believe or have confidence in the legislative branch of our government, in the executive branch of our government, in the courts and the judicial system, and also in the media. In the reporting that we've been doing throughout the pandemic, one of the challenges that I keep coming across is we'll present the day's latest numbers in terms of new cases, resolved cases, outbreaks, etc. And people will challenge us. They'll be like, oh, well, that's not the number that I saw on some other guy's Facebook post. And it's like, well, here's where I'm getting all my numbers from. So feel free to go and visit for yourself and verify the work that I've done. But, I didn't talk to, some guy on Facebook. I actually went and researched this. So, it can be destructive to sort of the civil structure of our democratic society when that cynicism starts to take place. So let's get into what the role of the media can be here.
Yeah, and Hugo, just to quickly jump in, just we have about 5 minutes.
5 minutes, yeah, I know. Just kind of seeing here. So with my apologies, I'm just going to click through to a few sort of key points that I want to make in terms of the role of the media. So as a journalist, one of the things that we're always going to do that you're not going to see with a lot of fake news or with a lot of sort of, something you might have heard at the coffee shop is we have a relationship with our sources. So be it a primary source, a document, a report, or a person, we know that person, we've met with that person, we've spoken with that person. We do research to prove and support what that person is saying, or we speak to that person as a source to help us prove information that we're presenting to the public. That information is edited. It's written in such a way that to sort of reinforce what is legitimate, what is true, and there's always the backstop that an editor, essentially a second person, sometimes depending on the size of the newsroom, a third or fourth, has taken the time to also go through, do that verification. So here's where we can kind of get to some of the guts of how can we help break the links in terms of sharing fake news. So this is an absolutely true stat. Most of the links that are shared on Facebook are not clicked on, particularly also on Twitter. Facebook's a little bit better than Twitter, but in most cases, links are shared or engaged or commented on. I see this on our own website. I can look at our top 10 news stories for the week, and I can look at the top 10 posts on Facebook that got the most engagement, and the two lists don't match. Our Facebook posts that do well are not among those stories that have been clicked on most on our website. Clicking is an important part of sort of working through this process. So here's where the 30 seconds comes in. There is an English language translation for the SEC, but I don't have it in front of me. But if we look at the French one, we were looking at the source. We're taking that critical sort of eye to it, and we're understanding what's being posted. So in terms of things to notice with the source, the name of the media, a logo, a byline, or the name of the journalist, a date, look at the link, and look at the about section. So name and media logo you see here, Science Avenir. There's a byline. There's a publication date. If you look at the link, it looks like a legitimate link. And if you click through to the about section, it gives you information in terms of the people who are involved in putting together this content. Even on social media, there are things that you can use to sort of check out a site that's reliable versus one that's not. Right? So Agence France Presse, you've got the little check mark. Again, if you go to the about, it gives you a description of who this is and who's put this content out. Right? Here's a fake news site. We see the name of the news site. There's no bylines. There's no dates. The link in and of itself, and in this particular example, there's no about section. Le Devoir is something that's kind of built to spoof off Le Devoir. So again, you see the name of the media. However, if we can compare Le Devoir to Le Devoir, one of the things that some social media do is they have that blue check for verification purposes. Again, revolutionbreak.com is something that is shared quite a bit on social media. It's made to look as though it's an ESPN or other sports website. It's actually pushing a performance-enhancing drug. And eventually, whenever you click, this is always what comes out. And I know I'm coming right up tight on time here. So the other weight is sort of critical reading skills that we're trying to get our readers to use when they're looking at a piece of content, right? So, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, is it playing off of our emotions, right? So legitimate news is meant to inform. Not on legitimate news has those other modifications that we talked about earlier. There's also, and this goes to that earlier question, some very quick research that we can do, right? So a quick Google search of the topic will often show you who else is talking about this subject. And then are those, legitimate news sources or are they not? If one media is reporting on something, chances are that a lot of its competitors are also reporting on the same subject. And then if you compare those search results with the legitimate media that you know are covering in your community or this issue, that can be a really easy first way. So I am right up on time. I'm not sure how much flexibility we have in terms of taking one or two quick questions, but there is one thing that I will leave you with, which is this is obviously a project of the FPJQ with support from a number of other ministries. You can go to the FPJQ website, which is fpjq.org, and request this presentation virtually for now or in person once that's permitted for your school or for your students. If you forget that link, certainly if you get in touch with Julian, he can help facilitate that for you. So with that, thank you very much. If there's any time for questions before we need to take our break, I'm happy to answer them. If not, thanks once again for inviting me to be a part of your day.
Well, that was quite the summary tonight. I was very happy with that, actually. But you actually managed in the last half of your presentation to answer several of the questions that had come along the way, especially about conspiracy theories and a few other things. There is one question here that I think might be a little bit more elaborate. But at the same time, I think you may have answered a bit about talking about the psychology of people who believe in fake news. There are people who believe in it, but what are those things that we can do to try to promote others more to be more skeptical of what they're learning? So I think you kind of addressed that, but is there anything you want to elaborate on? Or
I think I'd come back to, it gives me an opportunity to come back to some of the slides that I was kind of rushing through at the end due to time. But the whole goal of this Take 30 Seconds is if we see a piece of information and, that little flag goes off, or even if it doesn't, take 30 seconds, go through those steps, right? Look at the source. Does it seem legitimate? Is it from a legitimate source? Is it from someone click on the link, look at what it is that you're about to share, that you're about to engage with. Take that time to just do a 30-second little critical check. And then, if after taking that 30 seconds, if it feels legit and it's something that, is important for you to share or that you want to share, then yeah, absolutely go ahead, engage with that content. If not, then, you've done the work to verify that it's not something that's worthwhile sharing.
Okay, perfect. Other than that, we've had a couple of positive comments. Thank you very much. This has been very helpful. One person actually said that they had this presentation at their school and it was excellent. And just for my own personal closing on that, for me, this is awesome. I found this is really great. I work on a lot of times with information literacy, and it helps to see different ways that we can try to help our students go through this web and this maze. I'm sure that everybody here learned quite a bit today that, not only going to do this professionally, but in our own personal lives as well. And I think that's in the end what we all want. So thank you very much, Hugo. That was fantastic.